I'm 89 years old, and last Christmas my wife died while the living room still smelled like pine and dust from the box of ornaments I'd dragged out too early. I keep thinking about the one thing I did that week, small, ordinary, that made the whole holiday feel wrong in a way I didn't understand until it was already over. I'm sitting in my room tonight because the house is too quiet when I sit in the usual places. The room has always been my in-between heart, not the house, not the world, just a place where you can pretend you're busy. There's a photo album on the workbench, the kind with sticky black pages and plastic sheets that crackle when you lift them. It's open to a picture of her in a red sweater, holding a strand of lights like it's a boa. Her smile is crooked because she's laughing at me, at something I said probably. I'm going to tell you exactly why the decorations stopped mattering to me, not in a life lesson way, in a this is what I did and I can't undo it way. And I'll tell you the moment it became clear, later, when the lights were still up and she wasn't. I used to think Christmas was something you built. You know, the boxes, the ladder, the routine, the work that makes you feel like a decent man because you've made the house look like a place that belongs to a family. It's embarrassing to admit this, but I hid inside that work. I told myself it was for her, for the spirit, for the kids when they visited, even though the kids are grown and they don't stay long and half the time they're looking at their watches like they've got a second life they need to get back to. But it was also for me. It kept my hands moving so I wouldn't have to sit still with her questions. And there was one question she asked me softly, like she didn't want to start a fight, that I didn't answer. Not because I didn't hear it, because I did. I just delayed it, like I delayed everything that mattered. I'll get to that question. I can still hear how she said it. This is why I'm talking now. In 8 days, a man is coming with papers, selling the house papers. My daughter arranged it like a dentist appointment. Clean, quick, no arguing. She says I can't live alone in a place this big anymore. She's probably right. But I want to sit here one more Christmas Eve and tell the truth while the house is still mine, even if it doesn't feel like it belongs to anyone now. Last year, about a week before Christmas, my wife, Ellen, stood in the doorway between the hallway and the living room. She had a cardigan on, the one with the worn elbows, and she was holding the little ceramic angel we always put on the mantle. Not the tree topper, the mantle angel. It wasn't even pretty. One wing had a chip from when our son was 5 and took a corner too fast. Ellen held it like it weighed something, and she said, "Can we just do it simple this year?" I should have heard what she meant. What I heard was, "Don't bother." So I did what I always did when I felt cornered, and I got practical. I said, "It doesn't take that long." And then this is the part that makes my throat tighten even now. I pointed at the storage bins like they were evidence in a case. "Everything's right there," I told her. "We might as well." She didn't argue. That's the thing people don't tell you. Sometimes the end of a marriage doesn't look like yelling or doors slamming. Sometimes it looks like your wife just nodding, like she's saving her strength for something else. I went into the bins. I pulled out the lights and I tested every strand like a man preparing for battle. One bulb out and I'd stand there frowning, swapping it, getting angry at glass and wire like that's what deserved it. Ellen sat down on the couch for a minute, then stood up again, then sat down again. She kept adjusting her cardigan at the collar like it was choking her. She said, "Do you want some tea?" I said, "In a bit." In a bit is the phrase that ruined my life in small pieces. If you've ever said, "in a minute," when someone asks for you, you know what I mean. You think you're postponing something minor. You don't realize you're training them to stop asking. The day after that, she had a doctor appointment. She didn't want me to go. She said it like it was nothing. "I can drive," she said, but she was already driving slower than she used to, and I'd started noticing the way she held the steering wheel like it was slippery. I should have insisted. I didn't. I said, "Call me if you need anything." I went back to the lights. That was my first small confession. I didn't go because I didn't want to sit in a waiting room and be scared in public. I've never liked being watched when I don't know what to do. By the time she came home, it was late afternoon, that pale winter light that makes everything in the house look like it's been left out too long. Ellen set her purse down carefully, like her arms had become fragile. She said, "They want some more tests." I kept untangling the lights. I said, okay. Not, are you scared? Not, what did they say? Just, okay. Like she told me the grocery store was out of apples. She went into the bedroom. I heard a drawer open, close, then nothing. That silence should have sent me down the hall. Instead, I kept working. I told myself I was keeping things normal. That was my second confession. Normal was my way of refusing reality. That night, we ate dinner without music. We used to play the radio softly, old stations, holiday songs that sounded like they were recorded in a different world. That night, the radio stayed off because Ellen said, "Not tonight," and I didn't ask why. We ate quietly. The fork sounds too loud, the kind of silence that makes you chew slower. Halfway through, she said, "If things get bad, you'll be okay, won't you?" I laughed. I said, "Don't talk like that." I meant, don't make me look at it. She looked down at her plate and said, "I'm not trying to upset you." That sentence, "I'm not trying to upset you," is what people say when they've been managing your feelings for too long. I didn't understand that until later. Here's the part that still makes me angry, and I don't know where to put the anger, so it turns into shame. I was proud of how good our house looked from the street. There, I said it. I'd go outside at dusk in my coat and stand at the end of the driveway to see the lights the way a stranger would see them. I would adjust a single strand so it hung evenly. I would step back, squint, like I was hanging art in a museum. Meanwhile, Ellen would be inside, and I'd tell myself she was resting. She was resting, yes, but she was also waiting, and I didn't ask what for. 2 days before Christmas, she asked me to sit with her in the bedroom. She said it plain. "Can you come sit for a minute?" I had one hand on a box of ornaments. She said, "Okay," again with that quiet okay. I remember the sound of the plastic lid snapping on the ornament box. I remember it because it sounded final, like closing a book. When I finally went into the bedroom, she was asleep, turned toward the wall. I stood there like a fool, not sure if I should wake her. I didn't. I told myself she needed sleep. That was my third confession. Sometimes I use sleep as an excuse because I didn't know how to begin hard conversations. Christmas Eve morning, she woke up early and sat at the edge of the bed, feet on the floor, hands in her lap like a little girl waiting to be told what the day would bring. I was still half asleep, and she said very softly, "I don't think I should be home." I sat up too fast. My heart started doing that stupid pounding thing. I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "My chest feels wrong." She didn't want to say pain. She didn't want to scare me. She was still managing me. I wanted to say the right thing. I wanted to be the husband in the movies who suddenly becomes steady and brave. What I actually said was, "Maybe it's the cold." Then she looked at me, and there was something in her face that I can't describe without sounding dramatic, so I'll just say it the plain way. She looked tired of convincing me. We ended up at the hospital. The waiting area was too warm, and the chairs were that vinyl that sticks to your coat. People were sitting close to each other, but acting like they weren't. Ellen got taken back, and I was left with my hands empty. I hate having empty hands, so I went to the vending machine and bought a coffee I didn't want. I kept checking the time like I could control the day by watching it. A nurse came out and said they were keeping her overnight. Then another doctor said they wanted to run more tests. Then they said complications. And then "we'll see." "We'll see" is a cruel phrase when you're old, because you know what "we'll see" really means. It might not go the way you're pretending it will. Ellen looked small in the hospital bed. Her hair was flattened on one side, and she kept pulling the blanket up even though the room was warm. She said, "The tree's up, right?" And this is the moment I want to go back and slap myself. I smiled. I said, "It looks beautiful," as if that mattered, as if that was what she was asking. Then she said, "Good, I wanted it to look nice." And I said, "Ace, of course." If you're listening closely, you can hear the way we were talking around the real thing. She didn't say, "I'm scared." I didn't say, "I'm scared too." We talked about the tree. At around 10 that night, she said, "You should go home and sleep." I didn't want to. but I also didn't want to sit there all night with my fear in my useless hands. So I went. I told myself I was being practical. I told myself I'd come back early. At home, the lights were on the tree and the ornaments were hung. The living room looked perfect. I stood there in my coat and stared at it. The house smelled like pine, and underneath that, there was that dusty smell from the old boxes, the smell of years. I turned on the tree lights and sat in the dark watching the colors blink. It's the ugliest kind of memory because from the outside it looks like a peaceful scene. A man alone with a Christmas tree, but I wasn't peaceful. I was avoiding something I didn't know how to face. I went into the garage that night and pulled out the photo album. I don't know why. Maybe because it's easier to look at someone on paper than in a hospital bed. There's a picture of Ellen in our first apartment standing next to a tiny fake tree, laughing because it kept falling over. She's holding it upright with one hand, cigarette in the other. We quit smoking years ago, but in the photo it looks like we own time. I sat on a stool and looked at those pictures until my eyes burned. Then I did something I didn't tell anyone. There's a little ornament, an old glass bell, that Ellen loved. She bought it at a church bazaar when we were in our 30s. It's plain, just a bell, with a little painted holly leaf. Years ago, I dropped it and cracked it. Not shattered, cracked. Still hangable if you were careful. I never told her I broke it. I put it in the bottom of a bin and hid it under tissue paper because I didn't want to see her disappointed face. That night I took it out, I held it in my hand, and I felt how thin the glass was. I thought about how many times Ellen had wrapped it, unwrapped it like it was a small sacred thing. I could have brought it to her. I could have said, "Look what I found." I could have said, "I'm sorry I broke it." Instead, I put it back and closed the lid. I don't know why I'm telling you that, except that it's the same pattern. Small truth avoided, small repair delayed, and then one day there's nothing left to fix. Christmas morning, I woke up before dawn and drove back to the hospital. The sky was that heavy gray that makes everything look unfinished. Ellen was awake. She smiled when she saw me, but it was smaller than her usual smile, like it didn't have much fuel. I sat by her bed and held her hand. Her fingers felt cooler than they should have. She said, "Did you get any sleep?" I lied. I said, "Some." She said, "Good." Then she looked up toward the ceiling and she said, almost like she was thinking out loud, "I don't want you to be mad later." I frowned because I didn't understand. "Mad at what?" I asked. She turned her head and looked at me straight on. Her eyes were clear in a way that scared me, like she'd decided something. She said, "At me, for leaving you with all the little things." All the little things. Do you understand how gentle that is? How she was still trying to protect me even then? And I did what I always did when Ellen tried to talk about something real. I minimized it. I said, "Don't be silly." That's what I said. Don't be silly. As if death is a childish thought, as if she was being dramatic. Her face changed. Not anger, something worse, resignation. That was the moment she stopped trying to bring me with her into the truth. A nurse came in, then another. Then there was movement and words and IV bags. People speaking in that calm tone that is meant to soothe, but actually makes you feel like you're drowning quietly. I was told to step out for a procedure. I stood in the hallway and stared at a Christmas wreath someone had taped to a door. A hospital wreath? Can you imagine? Plastic pine, a little red bow, trying to pretend that this place isn't full of endings. That's when my phone buzzed, my daughter texting about what time she should come by the house, what she should bring, whether I'd remembered to set out the good plates. I stared at the message, and instead of ignoring it, instead of being where my wife was, I typed back like an obedient man. Short answers, practical answers. I thought, keep everything normal, keep the day moving. I can't explain how stupid the brain can be when it's terrified. When they let me back in, Ellen was sleeping. Her mouth was slightly open. She looked older than she ever looked in our kitchen, older than she ever looked under our living room lights. I sat down and watched her breathe. And I thought, absurdly, we didn't put out the stockings. That thought came into my head like a stray dog, and instead of kicking it out, I let it stay because it gave me something to do in my mind. Stockings, plates, ham, the little things. The nurse asked if I wanted to go home for a while and eat. She said there was no need to sit there hungry. I should have said no. I should have said, I'm staying. What I said was, just for a little bit. Just for a little bit. And I drove home and I did it. I put out the stockings, I set the table, I even moved the angel on the mantle so it was centered. I did all the stage dressing for a holiday that was already slipping away. Then I got a call from the hospital. I won't repeat the whole conversation. It doesn't deserve the attention. All you need to know is, I turned around in the hallway and the sight of the decorations made me furious. Not because they were ugly, because they were fine. They were doing their job. They were smiling, blinking, shining, and they didn't care what was happening to us. I drove back too fast. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I kept whispering, no, 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 like that's a spell. When I got there, I wasn't in time. I wasn't in time for the last minute when she might have been awake. I wasn't in time for the last sentence. I was there for the afterword. I walked into the room and Ellen was still. Her face was calm in a way that didn't look like sleep. The nurse said something, but I didn't hear it properly. The sounds were muffled, like my ears had filled with water. I touched her hand, and it was not her anymore. And that's the part nobody tells you. Your person becomes not your person, not because you love them less, but because whatever made them themselves is gone, and your hands don't know what to hold on to. I said her name, quietly, like calling someone from another room. It didn't work. I stood there and stared at her, and I thought of the tree, the angel, the stockings, and I realized something so sharp it almost felt like physical pain. All that effort I put into making things look right was energy I didn't put into being with her when she asked, because she did ask, not with big speeches, with small everyday requests that I kept pushing aside like they were nothing. Come sit with me. Can we do it simple this year? If things get bad, I kept answering her fear with tasks. I kept treating her like she was interrupting my schedule. And now there was no schedule left to protect. After Ellen died, people came by the house with casseroles and quiet faces. The kids took care of things. They handled paperwork and phone calls and the kind of details that make you feel like you're watching your own life from the outside. One of my grandkids turned on the tree lights without asking, and I nearly snapped at him. Not because he did anything wrong, because I couldn't stand the sight of them. They looked like they were mocking me. I left the decorations up for weeks, not out of tradition, out of paralysis. Every time I reached for a box, my arms felt heavy, because taking them down meant admitting Christmas happened without her. That time kept going even when my heart didn't. One night in January, I went out to the garage and opened that photo album again. Same spot, same crackling plastic page. I found a picture I'd forgotten about. Ellen in the living room years ago, kneeling by the tree with that little glass bell ornament in her hand. She's looking up at me. The camera caught her mid-sentence. Her mouth is open like she's saying something teasing. I stared at that photo for a long time. Then I did something childish. Something mean. I said out loud, I did it. I kept everything looking nice. Was it worth it? Of course she didn't answer, but my own voice in that room sounded ugly, like I'd become a man I didn't recognize. That night I opened the ornament bin and dug out the cracked bell. I held it in my palm, and I finally understood how stupid my pride was. I didn't tell her I broke it because I didn't want to be seen as careless. But what's worse than careless is absent. I would have traded every ornament in that bin for 5 more minutes in that hospital room with her awake. 5 minutes where I didn't say, don't be silly. 5 minutes where I said the sentence I never learned to say easily. I'm scared too, stay with me. Instead, I've got the lights, I've got the version of Christmas that photographs well. And I've got a house that echoes. So when people say, at least you had many years, I nod, because what else do you do? But inside I think, I had years, yes. I had years to practice being present, and I practiced being busy. That's the part that hurts. It wasn't one big mistake. It was 1,000 small ones, each one so reasonable at the time. I can't fix what happened. I can't go back to that couch and sit beside her when she asked. I can't go back to that hospital room and say the words that were waiting in me like a locked drawer. All I can do now is tell the truth while I still remember it clearly. Here's what I wish I'd done. Just one tiny thing, nothing heroic. I wish I'd stopped what I was doing the first time she asked for me. Not later, not after the lights, not when I finished this. Right then, even if my hands were full, even if the tree wasn't perfect, because the tree didn't need me, she did. If you're hearing this and you've got someone in your house who keeps saying things softly, like they're afraid of burdening you, I hope you don't answer with chores. I hope you don't answer with "in a minute." And if you don't know what to say, that's fine. I didn't either. But I wish I'd sat down anyway. There's something else I should admit, because it's part of why I'm here in the room tonight, talking into the quiet like it might listen. When Ellen died, I stopped putting up the decorations because I told myself they didn't matter. But that's not entirely true. They matter to children, they matter to visitors, they matter to memories. What doesn't matter is using them as a substitute for love. This year, the bin stayed shut. Not as a statement, not as a protest. I just couldn't stand the idea of arranging beauty around a missing person. Tomorrow, my daughter will come by around noon. She'll bring pie. She'll fuss with my collar and ask if I'm eating enough. She'll look at the empty corners and try not to show the worry on her face. And I'll do what I always do. I'll say, I'm fine. But I'm not fine in the way people mean. I'm fine in the way an old house is fine after a storm, still standing, but with water in places you can't see unless you know where to look. I'm going to close the album now. The plastic sheet makes that crackling sound again, like thin ice. If you've got a minute, you can tell me what part of this sounded familiar so it doesn't feel like Ellen and I were the only ones who got it wrong. If there's someone you care about who hides and busy, you can pass this along quietly, the way you'd slide a note across a table. And if you want to stay here for the other things I should have said years ago, you can. I'll still be in this room for a little while yet. I set Ellen's wedding ring, mine too, into the small dish on the workbench right beside the open photo album, and I don't turn the radio on.